emergency.
Captain's down. We need fighter pilot experience now.
You?
In coach? This isn't a game. Give me the yoke.
The rain lashed against the fuselage like 1,000 angry fists, and the Boeing 777 shuddered through the black heart of a monster storm brewing over the Atlantic, just off the Carolina coast. It was one of those freak tempests that old-timers like me remember from the days when flights from New York to Miami felt more like rolling the dice than hopping a puddle jumper. Inside, the cabin lights flickered like a bad neon sign in a forgotten diner, and the air smelled of stale coffee and fierce sweat. That's when the co-pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, raw and ragged, like a man who'd just seen his whole world unravel. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael Reynolds said, his words tumbling out in a rush that betrayed the steel nerves pilots are supposed to have. "We've got a medical emergency up here. Captain Ellis is down unconscious and I need help. Right now? If there's anyone on board with fighter pilot experience, military training, anything like that, please make yourself known. We're in some rough air, folks, and I can't handle this alone." In seat 24B, economy class all the way back where the real folks sit, the ones who pack light and dream big, Evelyn Harper stirred from a light doze. At 42, she'd mastered the art of catnapping anywhere. On troop transports in the Iraqi desert, in the ready room before a dawn patrol, even on this red-eye from JFK that was supposed to be her quiet reward after a week of board meetings in the city. She was dressed like any other traveler heading south for a family reunion, faded Levi's, a plain cotton shirt rolled at the sleeves, her thick curls pulled into a no-fuss bun that said practical more than power. No one gave her a second glance. To the passengers around her, she was just another face in the crowd, maybe a teacher or a nurse coming home to Charleston. But Evelyn's eyes snapped open at that plea, sharp as a hawk spotting prey from 5 miles up. She'd heard voices like Michael's before, young, green, teetering on the edge of panic, and she knew what happened when good intentions met a storm without backup. Beside his wife in first class, up front where the leather seats cost more than a month's rent in Queens, Harold Jenkins adjusted his silk tie and snorted under his breath. A real estate developer from Atlanta, Harold had built his empire flipping foreclosed homes in the suburbs, the kind of man who believed success was measured in square footage and skepticism toward anyone who didn't look the part. "Fighter pilot? In coach?" he muttered to Victoria, his voice carrying just enough to turn heads. "Give me a break. These people are lucky if they've driven a golf cart without crashing." His eyes flicked dismissively over the cabin, landing nowhere near Evelyn, who was already unbuckling her seatbelt with the quiet precision of someone who'd strapped in for worse than this. The plane bucked again, a vicious jolt that sent trays clattering and a toddler's wail piercing the hum of the engines. Outside, lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the roiling clouds like veins in a bruised sky. Among the 285 souls on board, families heading to Disney, retirees chasing grandkids, salesmen nursing hangover, panic rippled like a stone in a pond. A woman in row 15 clutched her rosary, whispering prayers in Spanish. A businessman in a rumpled suit fired off a text. "If this is it, tell Mom I love her." And Harold? He stood up, all bluster and Brooks Brothers, waving down a flight attendant who was weaving through the aisle like a tightrope walker in a gale. "Listen up," Harold bellowed toward the cockpit, his face flushed under the cabin lights. "My cousin's a crop duster out in Georgia, flies circles around these commercial clowns. I've logged hours in the jump seat myself. Let me up there. Hell, I paid 12 grand for these seats. I own half the damn plane in my mind." The attendant, a wiry kid named Lisa with wide eyes, shook her head. "Sir, we need military-grade experience. Civilian stuff won't cut it in this soup." Harold puffed up like a bullfrog. "Doubting me? In my line of work, I close deals in boardrooms tougher than this cockpit. Who's with me?" Evelyn paused in the aisle, her hand steady on the seatback as another wave of turbulence tried to knock her off balance. She scanned the faces around her, curious stares from some, outright doubt from others. The elderly couple across the way exchanged whispers. "Her? She looks like she's heading to a PDA meeting, not a war zone." The subtext hung heavy, the kind of quiet judgment Evelyn had swallowed 100 times before. Too young, too unpolished, too black to command respect in a room full of strangers who saw her as scenery, not savior. But she'd learned long ago, back in the cockpits of F-35s over Fallujah, That silence was her sharpest weapon. And when Michael's voice broke again, "Please, anyone with combat hours, step up. We're blind in here." Winds at 80 knots and climbing, something ignited in her gut. Not anger, not yet. Just the old fire, the one that had carried her through sandstorms and SAM missiles when the odds screamed bail out. She moved then, not with a shout or a strut, but with the fluid grace of a woman who'd danced with death and led the band. Heads turned as she approached the forward galley, her steps measured against the deck's pitch and yaw. "Excuse me," she said to Lisa, her voice low and even, cutting through the din like a knife through fog. "Colonel Evelyn Harper, United States Air Force. 1,500 hours in F-35 Lightning II, low-level navigation specialist. Expert in adverse weather ops. Point me to the cockpit." The cabin went still, the only sound the relentless drum of rain on the hull. Harold's jaw slackened, his imported cufflinks glinting as he gaped at her. "You've got to be joking," he sputtered, his laugh brittle as old glass. "Lady, I respect the troops donated to a VA fundraiser last year, but this? Betting my life on some fantasy? My wife and I shelled out a fortune for these seats to fly with pros, not passengers playing hero." Murmurs swelled. The elderly man in 2A leaned forward, squinting. "She qualified? Looks barely old enough to rent a car." A young mother in the middle section clutched her child tighter, her eyes darting between Evelyn and the storm outside. Was this bravery or hubris? The debate simmered unspoken. Could a woman like her, from who knows where, really hold the fate of strangers in her hands? Or was Harold right? That privilege bought you the truth, and appearances never lied? Michael appeared at the cockpit door then, his uniform rumpled, face ashen as printer paper. Sweat beaded on his brow, and his hands trembled just enough to betray the kid under the wings. Captain's seizing full-blown episode. "I've got the stick, but these crosswinds. I've never soloed a 777 in a Cat 4 squall." His voice cracked, and Evelyn felt it like a gut punch. She'd been that co-pilot once, green as spring grass, watching her squadron leader pull miracles from thin air. Harold surged forward again, blocking the path like a bouncer at a country club. "Kid, forget her. I've buzzed thunderstorms in Learjets from Atlanta to Aspen 200 hours as a passenger, but I know the drill. Procedures, checklists, the works. Let a real expert handle this." Evelyn stood her ground, her dark eyes locking onto Michael's. She didn't rise to the bait. She'd fought bigger battles than a loudmouth and loafers. Instead, she turned to him with the quiet command of someone who'd briefed generals. "Reynolds, talk to me. Altitude, airspeed, wind shear readings." He blinked, then rattled it off like a reflex. 35,000 feet, 480 knots indicated, shear at 90 knots with gusts to 120. Visibility's a Joe Kesero 0 in the soup. Harold barked a laugh. "Memorized that from a flight simulator app? Cute. Doesn't make you Lindbergh." Evelyn didn't flinch. She drew a breath, and when she spoke, it was a torrent of precision that pinned the cabin silent. "Loss of command, pilot. Immediate handover protocol. Stabilize pitch at current attitude. Engage autopilot auxiliary if available. Declare Mayday on 121.5 with squawk 7,700. Initiate controlled descent to 10,000 rate no steeper than 12 degrees to preserve airframe integrity. Notify ATC of medical divert. Request vectors to nearest ILS-equipped field. And for God's sake, get oxygen to the skipper before hypoxia turns this into a coffin." She didn't stop there. For a full 90 seconds, as the plane groaned through another downdraft, Evelyn reeled off contingencies, hydraulic failures, engine flameouts, even the esoteric drill for electromagnetic interference from lightning strikes. It was the lexicon of warriors, not weekend flyers, the kind of rote knowledge burned into muscle memory during endless sim sessions at Langley Air Force Base. Harold's bluster died in his throat. Even he, with his blithe ignorance, recognized the ring of authenticity. The cabin held its breath, the storm's roar fading to a distant growl. A few passengers exchanged glances. Had they just dismissed their own guardian angel? Michael's eyes lit with desperate hope. "My nth cockpit's yours." "God, thank you." But Harold wasn't done. He jabbed a finger at her chest. 1 minute. Procedures are one thing. Credentials are another. I want ID, logs, something before I let some economy class imposter strap in. This isn't a Joyride, it's my life, my family's. The words landed like slaps, echoing the ugly undercurrents Evelyn had navigated her whole career. The colonels who'd eyed her flight quals with a smirk, muttering about affirmative action aces. The promotions denied despite her kill ratio in drone hunts over the Euphrates. The locker room whispers that painted her triumphs as tokenism. It burned, that familiar acid of injustice, the violence of erasure that no metal could scrub clean. But Evelyn had forged her steel in those fires. Doubt wasn't a detour, it was jet fuel. "Mr. Jenkins," she said, her tone cool as a Blue Ridge morning. "Pilots come in 3 flavors. The fair weathers who quit at the first puff, the storm chasers who push till they break, and the ghosts who fly through hell and ghost back with the dawn." The plane lurched, screams erupting as overhead bins rattled like maracas. Evelyn didn't brace. She flowed with it, her stance unyielding. "I've nursed 22 birds home with systems freed, hydraulics gone, avionics dark, inbound fire from ground teams who didn't care about Geneva. What qualifies me ain't the ribbons or the logs. It's the knowing that when the manual quits, you don't." She stepped past him toward the door, but paused, turning with a gaze that could level mountains. "And when we kiss terra firmand, we will you might chew on how a black woman in coach, the one you pegged for not belonging, pulled your bacon from the fire. While you were busy judging the cover, she was writing the book." The aisle fell hushed as she vanished into the cockpit, leaving Harold red-faced and the passengers in a stew of awe and unease. Was she a hero, or had arrogance blinded them all to the real risk? Whispers flew. He had a point: verify first, trust later. "No, she's the real deal, his ego's the hazard." The divide crackled, a microcosm of the nation's fractures, where competence clashed with color and class like thunderheads colliding. Inside the flight deck, chaos reigned supreme. Captain Ellis slumped in his chair, convulsions racking his frame, froth flecking his lips as the EKG screamed bloody murder. Michael hovered frozen, hands ghosting the yoke like a boy at his father's wheel. Instruments blinked frenzy, altimeters spinning wild, radar painting a hellscape of red sheer lines. Evelyn slid into the vacated seat, her fingers flying to the captain's carotid pulse thready, but there. "First things, Reynolds, kit. Now." She snapped orders like rounds from a sidearm, stabilizing the trim while palming an amp of epinephrine from the med box. "We've got 8 minutes tops before arrest. Clear the vein, I'll talk you through it." Michael fumbled, then found his rhythm under her steady eye. "Colonel, how in blazes do you know field meds like that?" 12 years hauling medevac in the sandbox," she replied, taping the 4-line with tape from her pocket, always prepared. That was the creed. When you're the only bird between a bleeding Marine and a body bag, you pick up tricks. "Stabilize him, then we fly." Outside, the storm mocked them, hail pinging the windshield like buckshot, winds howling at 100 knots. In the cabin, Harold had rallied his corner. "See? She's winging it literally. I told you, no credentials, no control. We're doomed if we don't boot her." His wife, Victoria, quiet accountant with a spine of wrought iron, finally rounded on him. "Harold, enough. You're embarrassing yourself. And us." "Embarrassing? I'm saving our skins." Not trusting some, but his tirade choked off as Evelyn's voice boomed over the PA, laced with the unyielding timbre of command. "This is Colonel Harper. I'm assuming the con until we're wheels down. Stay strapped, follow crew leads, and breathe. We've got this." It wasn't bravado. It was bedrock, the voice that had rallied squadrons through oil fires and ambushes. Even Harold felt the chill, an involuntary shiver that whispered, maybe she's more than she looks. With Michael now her shadow, Evelyn transformed the cockpit from panic porch to war room. "Reynolds, eyes on fuel and cabin pressure report every 20 seconds. I'm punching us through the Devil's Alley, not around it." She sketched vectors on a knee pad, plotting a path that spat in the face of FAA gospel, straight into the storm's maw, threading the needle of a downdraft. "Ma'am, that's fighter jet crazy. A 777's not built for that." She flashed a grim smile, the first crack in her armor. "Son, 2015, Ramadi extraction. RPG shredded my port wing, ECM sweep flatlined. Haboob visibility to spit. Book said bail. I had 20 grunts counting on air. So I improvised. Dropped him at ballad without a scratch. Rules save lives breaking, right saves more. As she banked into the maelstrom, the debate in the cabin boiled over. Harold, undeterred, sweet-talked Lisa into escorting him forward just to assess, for safety's sake. He burst in like a bad sequel, eyes bulging at the scribbles. This is insanity. You're dooming us all. Get ATC on the horn, I demand a pro. Evelyn didn't glance up, her hands a blur on the throttles. Jenkins, this deck's for flyers, not fans. Back to your seat before I have you restrained. Restrained? I've chartered Falcons from Hartsfield to Heathrow. You're committing aerial suicide. That's when the door creaked again, admitting Dr. Margaret Lowell, head of cardiology at Duke University Hospital, her silver hair pinned back and scrubs peeking from under a cardigan. She'd been dozing in 1C, en route to a conference in Raleigh. Colonel Harper, she said, voice steady as a heartbeat monitor, Dr. Lowell here. Did 3 tours patching flyboys at Landstuhl. I can co-pilot on the med side for Ellis. Evelyn's head snapped up, and in that instant, recognition sparked not names, but souls forged in the same unforgiving kiln. Doctor, welcome aboard. He's tacky at 160 monitor for ectopics. G-forces incoming might spike him. Harold gawked as the 2 women synced like old wingmates, Lowell easing Ellis's airway while Evelyn fine-tuned the heading. You're all loons, he snarled, conspiring to crash us. Lowell fixed him with the weary patience of a doc who'd hushed frantic kin in ORs. Mr. Jenkins, I've wired Hart's mid-evac under fire. This woman's got institutional knowledge money can't touch. Sit down and let her work. Trust? On her say-so? It was the spark to tinder the ugly truth of it all bubbling up. Was expertise earned or inherited? Did skin color or seat class dictate who got the yoke? Passengers strained to hear, the storm's fury outside paling against the human one brewing within. Evelyn, mid-adjustment, keyed the guard frequency without missing a beat. Langley Tower, this is Colonel Harper on 121.5 Civil Air Emergency. Request auth confirm, position Alpha Tango 9er. Static hissed, then, Harper? Viper 1. Holy hell, it's you. Colonel, you've been off-grid 15 mics, the whole command scrambling. Confirm ident. The call sign hung like a thunderclap. Viper 1. The ghost in the machine, the ace who'd ghosted through Syrian no-fly zones with half her avionics dark, racking saves that made headlines in Aviation Week, but whispers in the mess hall. Harold blanched, the color draining from his ruddy cheeks as the truth dawned. He'd slandered a legend. Langley, affirmative. Evelyn pressed, weaving through a hail barrage that spiderwebbed the glass. Dual crisis pilot incapacitated, unforecast supercell. Vectors to nearest heavy iron strip. Viper, priority Alpha. East Coast cleared stem to stern. Medevac rolling to Norfolk International, foam down. Crash trucks hot. Dr. Lowell arched a brow at Harold. Tourists don't rate the USAF on speed dial, do they? But the Real kicker was yet to drop. As Evelyn plotted the plum meta corkscrew dive through the storm's eye, a maneuver cribbed from stealth jet playbooks, never tested on a whale like the 777, the radio lit up again. Viper, General Harlan here, join ops. Confirm. You threaded that C-17 through the Baghdad blackout in 08? Radio only, 0 visuals. Roger that, General. Variables flipped, but physics holds. Michael's jaw hit the deck. You guided a herd of transports blind? 22 airframes. 24. Evelyn corrected, her focus laser on the gauges as the deck tilted 40 degrees. You learn to read the air like Braillettes, thermals, the whole symphony. When you've danced with man-made monsoons from IED blasts, this is just Tuesday. Harold, legs jelly now, slumped against the bulkhead. The epiphany hit like a downdraft. He'd sized her up by shade and station, blind to the colossus beneath. Not just Skilita myth, studied in war colleges from Annapolis to Maxwell. The cockpit thrummed with it, the debate spilling back to the cabin. He was dead wrong, racism nearly killed us. But shouldn't we vet everyone? It's not prejudice, it's prudence. The friction fueled the fire, every lurch a reminder that trust, once broken, demanded blood to mend. Reynolds, comms to you, keep Harlan looped. I'm dark for the drop. Evelyn's voice was ice over gravel. The spiral began, a ballet of physics defying the behemoth's bulk, for 1,000 feet a minute. chasing a laminar flow in the Tempest's core. G's built like a freight train 3, 4, pinning bodies to seats as the world spun. Ellis groaned, stabilized by Lowell's steady hand. Outside, lightning waltzed the cloud walls, but the 777 held, unnaturally serene, as if the storm itself bowed to her will. "My lord," Michael breathed, watching the variometer unwind. "How'd you spot that chute?" "Years sniffing ordnance wakes in the Gulf," she said. "Explosions whip up vortices fiercer than this. Survive enough, and the impossible's just inertia." "Viper, radar paint this defies arrow," Langley crackled. "Stable at 4-kilo descent? You're rewriting the playbook." "Physics applied, General." 16 years turning wrecks into wheels up. Harold, voice a rasp now, croaked his surrender. "Colonel, I forgive the ignorance. What I said, save it." "Jenkins," she cut in, eyes on the horizon cracking through. "Apologies are cheap. Lives aren't. Help Lowell if you can, otherwise, strap in." The plummet peaked, the eyes calm a brief mercy. Then the push, spoilers out, gear down, Norfolk's beacons winking like home fires. Alarms wailed GPWS, sink rate, but Evelyn coaxed her through. Flare perfect, mains kissing tarmac at 140 with a whisper. Reverse thrust bit, and they rolled to a halt amid a phalanx of lights and ladders, the storm a fading growl. Sirens wailed as the slide bloomed, medics swarming for Ellis, who stirred groggy but alive. Passengers spilled out, dazed into daylight, hugging strangers like kin. Evelyn emerged last, uniform jacket from Michael's locker draped over her shoulders, the Viper pin glinting on her collar. Cheers erupted sporadic at first, then auroras the truth cascaded. Headlines already buzzing on cockpit laptops. Air Force Ace saves 777 in mid-air miracle. Harold lingered at the gangway, Victoria towing him away, her face a mask of quiet fury. "You almost cost us everything," she hissed. He had no reply, the weight of his words a millstone. 6 months on, the ripple hit like an aftershock. Evelyn Harper pinned on Brigadier General at the Pentagon, the youngest African-American woman to wear the star, her spiral technique etched into FAA and DoD manuals from here to Hickam. Universities clamored. Emory endowed a chair in her name. Proceeds from her memoir, Threads in the Tempest, bankrolling flight camps for kids from the projects. Michael Reynolds captained his own widebody now, his TEDx talk on the co-pilot's leap, crediting her with his wings. Dr. Lowell co-wrote the postmortem in the New England Journal, G-Forces and Grace, Synergy in Crisis. Harold? The fallout was biblical. Cell footage of his rant smuggled by a sharp-eyed purser went nuclear on TikTok and Fox feeds, 75 million views in a week. Racist rant dooms developer, blared the Post. Clients bolted, his firm cratered, bankruptcy papers served with a side of subpoenas for hostile environment suits from overlooked staff. Victoria filed in Fulton County, citing irreconcilable contempt, walking with the house in Buckhead and the kids' twins, 14, who now rolled eyes at his name in history class. "Dad, why's your Google alert all hate?" One asked over meatloaf, the innocence a dagger twist. He scraped by now, slinging Fords at a lot off I-85, bagging rides on MART's public grind he'd sneered at for decades. Every dawn, his commute grazed a billboard off Peachtree. Evelyn in dress blues, the tagline stark. Command knows no color, only courage. At a VFW hall indicator, nursing a bud, Harold cornered a vet who'd flown with her. She earned it, didn't she? Not handouts. The old sergeant clapped his shoulder. "Son, eagles don't beg scraps. They soar 'cause they must." 3 years later, fate looped them at Hartsfield, Evelyn in stars and aids, briefing a congressional junket. Harold, in polyester vest and name tag, wheeled a battered roller, eyes downcast. "General Harper," he ventured, voice small as a confessional. "I need to square this. That flight, what I spewed it was poison. Ignorance, straight up. Forgive." She regarded him, not with fire, but the measured mercy of one who'd outflown worse shadows. "Jenkins, you handed me the best ammo that day. Every barrier I smash, every cadet I lift, it's cause fools like you lit the fuse. But forgiveness? Earn it. Volunteer at those camps I fund. Teach kids what real flying looks like, not from a jump seat, but the heart." He nodded, throat tight, as she strode on, entourage in tow. In that parting, Harold grasped the cruelest cut. She'd built empires while he peddled regrets. Her vengeance? Not ruin, but radiancy, a legacy that dwarfed his dimming light. Success, she'd say in her Oval Office nod years hence, isn't payback. It's the proof that prejudice perishes in the glare of grit. And so the skies cleared, but the lessons lingered, etched in contrails across an America still wrestling its storms. Evelyn Harper didn't just save a plane that night. She charted a course for the doubters left earthbound, proving that true lift comes not from altitude, but from the unyielding will to rise. What about you? In a world rife with the quiet violence of judgment and the raw injustice of unseen scars, where do you draw the line between caution and cruelty? Have you stared down bias that nearly broke you, or wielded it without knowing? Share your stand in the comments, your stories of storm and survival. Let's talk it out. After all, every voice adds thrust to the fight.